For thousands of years, the Stoics have been writing and talking and teaching by their example the answer to our most important question, which is how to live. How to be a good person, how to make your way through a complicated and confusing world. And what the Stoics do best is make this stuff really simple. Everyone's wish is to be better, Seneca says, but we're often in the dark about how to do so. So in today's episode, that's what I want to do. I want to give you 60 Stoic lessons about how to do that, how to live, how to be a person in this confusing, overwhelming world, how to thrive in times of chaos, and how to live a life of virtue, of courage, discipline, justice, and wisdom. When Marcus Aurelius says the obstacle is the way, he's talking about something very specific. In that passage in Meditations, he's talking about difficult and obnoxious and annoying and frustrating people. He's saying they are an opportunity to practice virtue. We don't control them, we don't control what they do, we don't control what they say, but we control how we respond to those people. We control what they make us do. We control what we do. We control who we are in response to them. So frustrating people are a chance to practice patience. People who wrong us are a chance to practice forgiveness. People are a chance for us to practice our persuasive skills. The idea is that everyone we meet, even the most annoying and frustrating and obnoxious people, are a chance for us to be what we're capable of being. They're testing us, they're making us better. Your problem is that you want the third thing. Marcus Aurelius says, okay, you did something good for someone. They received that benefit. That's awesome. Transaction concluded. You don't need the third thing. Recognition, gratitude, appreciation. You don't need the world to throw you a parade. You don't need acknowledgement. And you didn't even do anything special. You did your job, which is to do good, to be good, to help people, to be kind. You did the right thing. That's enough. It's easy to get swept away, to get carried away, to get worked up. There are forces that have always been howling and blowing at people. Today, it's the news and social media, but in the past, it was the frenzy of the mob or public opinion, floor of the Colosseum. Our job, the task of Stoicism, is to help us keep that even keel. Marcus Aurelius says to be like the rocks that the waves crash over, eventually the sea falls still around. Chrysippus, one of the early Stoics, he said, look, if I wanted to follow the mob, I wouldn't have become a philosopher. Our task, the purpose of Stoicism, is to help us slow down, to act with some restraint, to be able to reflect, to put every impression or opinion to the test, as Epictetus said, to not get swept away, to not be buffeted by forces beyond our control, to keep our bearings, to keep our values, to keep from losing our minds when everyone else around us is losing theirs. So this thing that you're anxious about, that you're dreading, that you don't want to happen, one question you can ask yourself, Marcus Aurelius says, is how does it stop you? This other person, this unfairness, this bad outcome, says, how does it stop you from acting with courage and justice and wisdom and discipline? How does it stop you from acting with the four virtues? And you realize it doesn't. Look, there can be a whole bunch of things that you don't want to happen that are not going to be fun if they happen, that are going to cause problems, but they can't prevent you from doing your main job, from doing what's actually important, from acting and living with virtue. Not only can these things not stop you from acting with courage and discipline and justice and wisdom, but in fact, they're opportunities to act with courage and justice and discipline and wisdom. Some people say that Marcus Aurelius' Meditations is depressing. But you know what? Marcus Aurelius' life is depressing. This is a guy who lives through a historic flood, a plague, endless wars. There's a coup. They say no parent should have to bury a child. Marcus Aurelius buries half of his children. He has to attend 6 funerals for his children. He lost his father at an early age. Later, he loses his wife. It's one thing after another for this guy, one heartbreak after another. So Marcus Aurelius' Meditations isn't depressing. The fact that he got out of bed every morning was a profound statement of hope and perseverance and resilience and optimism. That he cared about anything, that he strove to be better, that he strove to be a good person, that he didn't let it wear him down, turn him into a nihilist, that it didn't deprive him of meaning and purpose. This is the hopefulness, this is the optimism, this is the cheerfulness in Stoicism, that despite the blows of fate, the unfairness of life, we keep going, we keep striving to be good, we keep striving to be and do our best. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius meditates on the interconnectedness of all being. He talks about how everyone shares a nature common to his own. In fact, he talks about the idea of the common good like 40 times in Meditations. He said we were put here for other people. We were put here to put up with other people. He also said to do good for and with other people. One of the reasons we get lonely is we're so focused on our stuff, our problems, what's going on with us, what we want. But really, if we think about this whole human species as this interconnected thing, even our connection with animals, with the environment, that we're put here to make a small contribution to this large project, that we can help other people, and that actually one way to forget our own sufferings and loneliness and struggles is to help other people, to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. And in the midst of a plague and warfare and all the struggles of Marcus's life, he never lost track of that, and he always insisted that he was put here to help and be of service to other people. Is a world without dishonest people possible? Is a world without annoying people possible? Marcus Aurelius asked himself this question in his journal 2,000 years ago, and he says, look, the answer is of course no. He says, so when you meet one of those people, go, look, this was statistically bound to happen. This is one of those people. They're a percentage of the whole. And we can apply this same exercise. Look, is a world where everyone likes you possible? Is a world without delayed planes possible? Are you going to hit every green light? No, of course not. So this is one of them. Just accept it. This is one of them. It was statistically bound to happen. Don't get worked up about it. Don't take it personally. And certainly don't be surprised. It was bound to happen. You're weak if you lose your temper. Stoicism was a masculine philosophy, but Marcus Aurelius pointed out how sort of pathetic it is that we get overwhelmed by our emotions and we lash out at people. Men sometimes judge other men for crying, but it's strange that we don't judge each other for losing our temper, which actually does hurt people, which is of less purpose. When you feel that sort of rage or anger coming on, the Stoics say, get control of yourself, get command of yourself. Say, is this who I want to be? Is this what being a mature adult is? And the answer is almost certainly no. The grudge you're holding, it's meaningless. Marcus Aurelius says, look at the people who held these grudges, who raged about things, who held on to things. He says, where are they now? They're dead and gone. The grudge went nowhere. And the same is going to happen to your thing. Whatever it is you're upset about, however significant it was for you, eventually it disappears along with you. So how can you work on letting it go? How can you move on? How can you process? How can you not carry it around? How can you not let it consume you? Nobody's born a saint. Even the people that we admire so much, that we look up to, they weren't born that way. They became that way. It's about the striving to be better than we are that makes us great. When you see someone who's cool under pressure, when you see someone who's generous, when you see someone who forgives, when you see someone who doesn't have a big ego, don't tell yourself, oh, they're just naturally better than me. That's letting yourself off the hook, and it's also unfair to them because it's ignoring all the work that goes into it, how they're striving to be that way. If you take Marcus Aurelius as this perfectly formed philosopher king, you're missing that he was writing in Meditations. The purpose of him writing Meditations was to be the person he was aspiring to be. And so we don't want to see these people as being born that way because they weren't, they were working at it. And there was people in their life. For Marcus, it's Antoninus or his philosophy teacher Rusticus, who shaped and inspired and helped him become who he was meant to be. And the same is true for us. Marcus Aurelius was a master of the morning. I think you have to be a successful person. You think that being your own boss or being rich or powerful or important will give you a lot of freedom, and it does, but it also demands so much discipline from you because so much is counting on you. One of the most interesting passages in Meditations is Marcus Aurelius talking to himself about why he has to get up early in the morning. He says, but it's so much nicer here under the covers. And then he says, but is this what you were put here to do? To huddle under the blankets and stay warm? No, it's not. He says, you have a duty to go do. And he says, look at the plants and the animals and the birds and the bees getting up and doing what their nature demands. And so that's what Marcus Aurelius tried to do. He tried to get up early. He says, at dawn when you awake, he gets up early, he seizes the day, he owns the morning. I think it's probably there in the morning that he's carving out some time to do a little journaling, to do a little thinking, to be intentional about the kind of person that he wants to be in the course of that day. And that's what survives to us in Meditations. And then he tries to get after what he has to do. He says, concentrate like a Roman, do this thing in front of you like it's the last thing you are doing in your life. And that's great advice for all of us. Whatever time we woke up in the morning, let's seize the day, seize the morning, and get after it. In book 11 of Meditations, Marcus Aurelius talks about something that must have been very common for him, which is that people didn't like him. People cursed him, they criticized him, they questioned his integrity, his commitment, all these things. So in book 11:13, he says, someone despises me, that's their problem. Mine, he says, not to do or say anything despicable. He says, someone hates me, their problem. Mine is to be patient and cheerful with everyone, including them, ready to show them their mistake, not spitefully or to show off my own self-control, but in an honest, upright way. That's what we should be like inside, he says, and never let the gods catch us feeling anger or resentment. If someone doesn't like you, that's their problem. And the important thing is that you don't let it change you, you don't let it affect you, don't let it make you like them. You just lock on to what you have to do, and you try to be patient and kind. You try to think better and do better for other people than in fact they might ever even think of doing for you. Marcus Aurelius in Meditation says the things you think about determine the quality of your mind. He says your life is dyed by the color of your thoughts. That's such a perfect way to put it. He's not saying like the law of attraction, that we attract these things. No, he's saying like if all you look for is the bad in people, all you're gonna see is the bad in people. If all you see is darkness and awfulness and evil, that's what your world is gonna look like. So the Stoics are saying that what we think about, what we look for in this world determines what we're gonna be able to see. And that is the discipline of perception. That's the power that we have. Our mind dyes what our life will look like. It's the lenses through which we look at the world. If you decide to see agency and power in yourself and in every situation you're in, you'll find it, even in the darkest, hardest of circumstances. If you look for shittiness, you'll see shittiness. If you look for goodness, you'll see goodness. It's as simple as that. People don't seem to understand this one really important thing. It's that you have a superpower. You have the power, Marcus Aurelius says, to have no opinion. He says, remember, events, things are not asking to be judged by you. You don't have to have an opinion about this, he says. You can just see it as it is. You can think nothing of it. You don't have to label it. You don't have to put it in categories. You don't have to say it's fair or unfair, positive or negative, smart or dumb. Just accept it as it is. The Stoics try to see the world as objective. Try not to insert opinions or judgments on top of things, because this is the path to peace. It's the path to wisdom. And of course, being agnostic in this way allows you to get to work doing what you need to do rather than wasting your time labeling, judging, and having opinions about stuff that is not up to you. It's unfortunate that this happened. You didn't want it to happen. You didn't choose for it to happen, but it did happen. Marcus Aurelius writes that to himself in Meditations. He says, it's unfortunate that this happened. But then he catches himself and he goes, no, it's fortunate that it happened to me. He means that, I think, in part because it didn't happen to someone else. But what he really means is it's fortunate that it happened to me because he'd trained for stuff like this, right? Marcus Aurelius' reign is one difficult thing after another. There's a plague, there's floods, there's everything that could go wrong does. And he's talking of those, he says, it's unfortunate this happened. No, it's fortunate to me. And he says, and I've remained unharmed by it. Because that's what Stoic philosophy is about, this idea that we're not harmed by external things. We respond to those external things. That's what we control. That's what we focus on. So whatever it is that you're going through, whatever just happened, it's not unfortunate that it happened to you. It's fortunate that it happened to you instead of someone else. And it's fortunate that you know how to deal with it. It's wrong to think of Stoicism just as a philosophy for adversity. Yeah, it's true. Zeno founds Stoicism in a disaster. There are Stoics who are tortured, Stoics who are imprisoned, Stoics who deal with poverty. But Marcus really finds himself the emperor of Rome, extreme power, extreme wealth, extreme fame. And he uses Meditations to see that as an opportunity to practice virtue. He says, you can live well even in a palace. He talks to himself about accepting it with indifference, letting it go without arrogance. One of the things he talks about repeatedly in Meditations is not being Caesarified, dyed purple by the purple cloak of the emperor. So we shouldn't just see Stoicism as a philosophy that helps us deal with the difficulties and the painful parts of life, but also as a philosophy that helps us from being corrupted by it, that makes us better when we achieve success, when we have things. That's part of Stoicism too. Basically, nothing lasts. That's the very Stoic idea. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius says, Alexander the Great and his mule driver, the same thing happened to both. They were both buried in the same earth. There's that Latin saying, sic transit gloria, right? All glory is fleeting. We think that if we become famous or popular or important, right, this says something about us, it makes us immortal, but it doesn't. You're eventually, inevitably, invariably forgotten. Nothing lasts. It doesn't matter. You could be the biggest thing in the world, and then one day you're not. Suddenly you're not. One of my books, Stillness, hit #1, and then you know what happened the next week? Someone else was there, right? I've had a good run, but it'll go away eventually. It inevitably, invariably always does. So what does matter then? The Stoics would say just being a good person, doing good work, focusing on what you control. That's it. We don't know a lot about the policies that Marcus enacts as emperor, but we know of a couple. One, he passes a law that makes life easier for slaves, some protections for them. And then another, he demands that the gladiators be given wooden swords to practice and fight with, basically to take a very dangerous, fatal sport and make it not so dangerous. I like this idea of Stoicism being, at least in part, about standing up for the little guy. Marcus says that one of the things he learns from the Stoics is this idea of a society of equals, of equal laws, of a ruler who protects the rights of their subjects. I just love the idea that Marx is talking about that in theory, and then he is in a position to do something about it, and he does. Not enough. None of us do enough. He reads Epictetus, he sees the brilliance of this slave who becomes a philosopher, and yeah, he makes the life easier for slaves, but he never questions the institution of slavery itself. But I do generally like the idea that Marcus did his best to practice what he preached. So for the last 5 years, I've carried this thing in my pocket. Some people think it's morbid, some people think it's weird, some people think it's unnecessary, but it's one of the most important, powerful, philosophical reminders I think there could be. It's this coin. It says, memento mori. On the back has a quote from Marcus Aurelius. It says, you could leave life right now. The second half of that quote is, let that determine what you do and say and think. The Stoics practice this idea of memento mori. Seneca writes so much about death. There's a translation of his works just called How to Die. In fact, in the ancient world, the whole point of philosophy, they said, was to learn how to die, to wrestle with the ephemerality of existence, with the inevitability of death. And so I have this little coin in my pocket. It reminds me not to waste time, not take people or things for granted, to focus on what's actually important, to not think too much of myself, to certainly not think that I am invincible or immortal. And it's just a lovely Stoic practice that I think about always, and so should you. It doesn't matter if you're cold or tired, if you're hungry or well rested. It doesn't matter the situation at all, Marcus Aurelius says. It's just that you do the right thing, since the rest doesn't matter. That's your job. The Stoics say your job is to do right. That's what the virtue of justice is about. There's no excuses, there's no explanations. The Stoics' virtue was the main thing. That was what we were put here to do. It doesn't matter what other people do or say. Marcus Aurelius writes to himself in Meditations, my job is to be good, also to do good, to help other people, to be a force for good in the world, to leave this place better than you found it. That's the ultimate habit. That's the habit that trumps all the other ones, and it's something you have to let guide and inspire all your actions and choices. Seneca has this great line. He says, we can't choose our parents, but we can choose whose children we would like to be. And she basically chooses which side of the family tree she's going to be descended from. You know, like, and so it doesn't really matter where you come from or what you did or what your parents did. You have this ability to like sort of choose whose footsteps you're going to follow in. And
I love that idea.
Yeah.
So where do you see grace with Stoicism?
I mean, one of the things Marcus Aurelius talks about a lot is this idea of revenge. And, you know, he says the best revenge is to not be like that. The sort of penultimate moment in his life. So he's ill and near death. And his most trusted general, basically sensing that the emperor was weak, names himself emperor. So he starts a palace coup. And Marcus is not as sick as they thought, and he recovers. And so now he's faced with this terrible dilemma. There can't be two emperors, and this person has put everything into danger and turmoil. And so, I mean, we know what his predecessors would have done in this situation. Hadrian comes to power and just liquidates, you know, and Marcus decides not to do that. He can't ignore it. He can't just let this happen, but he decides, he says, this is an opportunity. He says, we can teach future generations there's a way to even deal with civil wars, which I just think is this amazing sort of way of thinking about it. And they go to restore order, and ultimately the other general, this guy named Avidius Cassius, is struck down by an assassin, and they bring Marcus Aurelius' head, and they think the emperor is going to be happy and reward them, and he breaks down in tears because they've stolen from him the opportunity for clemency. And so he sends this message to the Senate, and he says, not a single person is to be put to death for this rebellion. He says, do not stain my reign in blood. Let it never happen. And just this idea, like when Marcus Aurelius says the obstacle is the way,
Yeah.
I think people have taken that, because that's how I wrote the first book. They've taken the obstacle is the way to mean, here's how you get ahead in business. Here's how you deal with these little disadvantages. You turn them into springboards. And that is part of it. But that famous passage in Meditations where he says, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes way. He's talking about other people. He's talking about frustrating, obnoxious, dishonest, evil people. He's saying that he says bad people are an opportunity to practice virtue. And so I think, to me, that's grace is only possible if there is first the thing you don't want to happen. Like if everyone was wonderful to each other and everything went perfectly, there would be no opportunity for grace. And so I think Stoicism would say that these things that you don't want to happen, these things that shouldn't happen, these things that are unfair to happen, these awful, dark, terrible things that human beings do to each other, the only good thing about them is who we can be in response to them. If we don't let them destroy our character and make us like the people that did the thing. One of the things the Stoics talk about is how when you really love what you do, you forget sometimes even to wash and eat. I don't know about forgetting to wash, but I do forget to eat all the time. I get busy. I get caught up in what I'm doing. I love what I'm doing. I'm also running around like crazy. I have kids. I have multiple businesses, and skipped meals, they sneak up on you. And that's where today's sponsor comes in. Huel is the world's leading complete nutrition brand. And right now you can try it with an exclusive offer from Daily Stoic. You can get 15% off plus a free gift for new customers with code DailyStoic if you go to Huel.com. That's Huel, Huel.com. Huel is great. There's no cooking, no prep. We keep a bunch here at the Daily Stoic offices for our employees. It's got 35 grams of protein, 27 vitamins and minerals, and no sweeteners, all in one handy bottle. They come in chocolate and vanilla, which is smooth and easy to drink. Huel is a perfectly balanced meal designed by experts to provide all the nutrients your body needs from a meal. Plus, it actually tastes good and it's affordable. Take the leap and try Huel with our exclusive offer for new customers. That's 15% off plus a free gift. Use the code DailyStoic at Huel.com. Unlock a healthier, easy way to eat with Huel. You want power, you want control, you want influence, and yet you neglect the most valuable empire there is. The greatest empire, Seneca said, is command of oneself. Your thoughts, your opinions, your actions, your urges. Command of oneself is the greatest empire. Self-command, self-discipline, self-control. That's real power. Think of how many powerful people, how many important people, how many people who ruled great armies or nations didn't have that. They were slaves to their desires, to their ambitions, to their need for more and more and more. And if you have control of yourself, then you have more than they will ever have. What's the secret to the good life? Seneca said in a single word, it's euthymia, which he defined as the sense of the path that you're on and not being distracted by the paths that crisscross yours. And he says, and this is the important part, he says, especially not distracted by those who are hopelessly lost. Right? So it's a sense of who you are, what you're supposed to be doing, and then being that person doing that thing and ignoring everyone and everything else. You have two choices, Seneca says. You can laugh or cry. Democritus, one of the philosophers, he cried. He despaired at how awful and evil the world was. Seneca pointed out Heraclitus, he laughed at it. We think of the Stoics as humorless, but they weren't. Instead of despairing, instead of being angry, instead of being depressed, instead of any of those negative emotions, they decided to laugh at the pain that life can inflict on us, because it's the one part of it we control. We control our response to it, so we might as well find humor in it instead of pain and suffering and anger. This tombstone right here has a little epitaph. It says, "I'd rather wear out than rust out." Theodore Roosevelt's father used to say that to him. It became one of his mottos, but it reminds me of this thing from Seneca. Seneca says, how much life do you have to show for all of those years? He's talking about how people, they live to a big number, but what do they have to show for it? So what do you have to show for the time that you have spent on this planet? Because that's one of the things that Seneca says. It's not that you die once at 80 or 90 or whatever. He says you're dying every day. So I'm 37 as I say this. Have I lived 37 years? I think so. I think I've really lived those years. That's the question. Are you wearing yourself out? Do you have something to show for the time you've been lucky enough to give? You've been lucky enough to get? What do you have to show for it? How are you living? It's better to wear out than rust out. There's a tension in Stoicism. So on the one hand, Seneca says we should imagine all the things that could possibly happen. This is premeditatio malorum, says the unexpected blow lands heaviest. If you're just naively going through the world expecting everything to be wonderful, never considering that this might happen or that might happen, you're gonna be caught off guard and it's gonna rattle you and hurt you worse than if you had some ability to anticipate this. At the same time, he says, he who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. He was talking about the way that we can sort of spiral and catastrophize. So it's important when we think about this premeditatio malorum, the Stoic idea of anticipating and considering what happened, it's not to torture ourselves. It's not just to go down this spiral of negativity and doomerism. It's to think proactively. I'll give you an example. Napoleon said that 3 times a day, a general should say to themselves, what if the enemy appeared over here? What if the enemy appeared over here? What if the enemy appeared over here? He wasn't saying that he just wanted his generals to be really anxious and worried all the time. He was having them run through the thought exercises. If this happens, I'll do this. If this happens, I'll do this. If this happens, I'll do this. So when we think about this Stoic practice, it's not just for generalized anxiety or worry. It's constructive. Okay, if this happens, here's what I'm going to do. If this happens, here's what I'm going to do. It's focusing on how we might respond to this. So it should actually be empowering in some way, as opposed to disempowering and scary and alarming. You're thinking, here are the constructive things I can do about these hypotheticals. I believe that I have agency and power to solve this scenario if it were to happen. Death is the one certainty. It's the one thing that will happen to every person that's ever been born. It's the prophecy that never fails, they say. And yet, how many people in this cemetery were surprised by it? How many people were caught off guard? How many people thought, oh, I thought I had more time? And how many of these people wasted enormous amounts of their time, as we all do? Seneca says we protect our property, we protect our money, and yet we're so frivolous with our time. The one thing we should be the strictest misers about, he says, we just really hand out to people. We let it be wasted because we think we have so much of it, and we don't. Eventually, we all come to the end, and not just eventually, could be sooner than you think. Memento mori, the Stoics say, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Just reading a book is not enough. You have to reread the book. Seneca says we have to linger on the works of the master thinkers. It's talking about reading it once and again and again and again, because each time we read the book, we find something new. We bring something new to it, we take something new out of it. It's not just that we suffer more in imagination than we do in reality, as Seneca says. It's that we add suffering, right? So we're dreading this thing that might happen. Indeed, it might happen, but by thinking about it, walking ourselves through it, going over it over and over and over again, living in it right now as if it will happen. What we're effectively doing is borrowing that suffering. We're like, I want to deal with it now. I want to sit in it now. I want to feel it for longer. So we have to remember that this use of our creativity, the way we're thinking about the thing over and over again, we're living in it, we're actually just adding suffering on top of the thing that may or may not actually even happen. You're not going to be successful because you haven't defined what success is. You haven't really thought about where you're trying to go. Seneca says that if you don't know what port you're sailing towards, no wind is favorable. If you don't take the time to really go, where am I trying to go? What does that look like? You're not going to be able to make the individual day-to-day, part-by-part decisions that will allow you to actually get there. You won't know how to respond properly to the things, to the opportunities, and to the obstacles that you face along the way. It's strange that the Stoics have this reputation for being unfeeling, for being emotionless, because actually 4 of Seneca's best and most moving pieces of writing are actually known as his consolations to people who have lost someone, and he's consoling them in their grief. And I actually read these essays whenever I've lost someone or I'm trying to comfort someone who's lost someone. The part that hit me the most, he's writing this letter to the daughter of a friend who has died. He's saying, look, your father loved you very much. What do you think he would want from you right now? Of course, he wouldn't want you to be happy that he's dead, but would he want his memory of you, Seneca says, to make you miserable? No, it's the exact opposite. He'd want you to think about him and be happy, to remember good times, to be filled with joy. It's such a wonderful little insight about grief And it's such a good insight to the Stoics too, because if the Stoics were unfeeling and didn't have emotion, Seneca would just say, get over it, don't feel it. But that's not what he's saying at all. Instead, he came up with this great way of thinking about it. Every new year, Seneca started the year off with the same thing. He would throw himself into the Tiber River, the freezing river in Rome, on the 1st of January. There's two things he's getting out of it. One, it's like a fresh start. He's washing himself clean of who he was the year before, metaphorically, literally wiping the slate clean. But two, I think he's starting the year off by doing something hard and painful and unpleasant and weird, something that requires willpower. His famous line about we treat the body rigorously so that it's not disobedient to the mind, he's starting the year off by asserting who's in charge. He's saying, I'm in charge. I'm so in charge. I'm hurling myself into this freezing river even though I really don't want to. And that's such a great, important Stoic lesson. It's something we all have to practice. It's very easy for your day just to get filled up. There's a passage in one of Seneca's essays where he's talking about these busy Romans who are just running around town all day. And he said, but if you ask them, what are they actually doing? Would they have a good answer? He calls this sort of busy idleness. I could very easily find my days just getting filled up with email, getting filled up with just stuff. But I know that I'm not doing my job, that I'm not moving the ball forward if I'm not doing what's called deep work every day. The ability to focus, to lock in, to have large, uninterrupted blocks of focus is the most essential thing that you can do. For me, I try to do that really early. I try to spend 1 to 2 to 3 hours of uninterrupted work. Not administrative work, not responding to stuff, catching up on stuff. You need to have uninterrupted blocks of deep work, of focus, where you are locked in and you're actually doing what it is that you do. In recovery circles, they have this great acronym, HALT. It stands for hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. The point is, when you're feeling those things, you're less likely to be able to be the strong-willed, disciplined, healthy, safe, smart person that you want to be. The Stoics weren't superhumans. In fact, a big part of Stoicism is that kind of self-awareness, monitoring why you're feeling what you're feeling, stopping when you feel that feeling and going, why am I feeling this way? So if you're mad at yourself for falling off, if you're mad at yourself for not being the disciplined, stoic, and complete and total self-command of themselves, stop and think about that acronym. Ask yourself, hey, what's actually going on with me? Seneca says that philosophy doesn't take away natural feeling, but it doesn't matter how many books you've read, how steeped in stoicism you are. If you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, you're not going to be your best self. And thinking about that is a really, really important part of making better decisions. I remember Tim Ferriss told me one time that he, like Seneca, practices poverty. It seems weird, especially because Tim is very, very successful, but maybe that's the point. Tim was pointing out that one of the things Seneca liked to do one day a month or every quarter or so is he would practice poverty. He'd wear his worst clothes, he'd sleep on the floor. And his point was, when he would practice this poverty, when he would deliberately subject himself to difficult circumstances and realize that they're not so bad, he could then say to himself, is this really what you're afraid of? Is this something you have to worry about? And that was one of the things Tim told me. He said, the more you schedule and practice discomfort in your life, the less unplanned discomfort will throw you off in your real life. So that's what Seneca was really doing. He was practicing the thing we're all afraid of, which is starting back from zero, going back to how it was when we were just starting out, losing what we have, losing our creature comforts. He was practicing those, not because he wanted it to happen, but he knew that it potentially could happen. If it did happen, he didn't want to be rattled by it. He didn't want to be overwhelmed or ruined by it. If someone came and just took $100 from you, or if you caught your neighbor building something on your property, you'd be livid. You'd say, hey, you're stealing from me. You can't do that. Seneca said the craziest thing in the world is that we protect our money, we protect our property way more than we protect our time. We let people steal our time like that, right? We let our neighbor drone on and on about some nonsense. We get sucked into some drama from our neighbor. We fritter away our time on stuff that doesn't matter. And that's the one thing they're not making more of. That's the one thing you can never get back. In fact, Seneca says the time that passes belongs to death. It's dead and gone and can never return. So you have to ask yourself, why aren't you protecting this resource better? Why are you letting people steal from you? And you gotta stop. You should be happy to pay your taxes. The Stoics weren't making a political statement when they said that. They were saying that life is a series of taxes. Delays are a tax on travel. Critics are a tax on doing stuff in public. Annoying people is a tax of going outside your house. And Seneca says we have to pay the taxes of life gladly. We can't run away from them. We can't think that we deserve to be exempt from them. We can't grind ourselves down with bitterness and resentment by fighting against them, by feeling like we've been singled out by them. What else are you going to do? It's one of the certainties of life, so you might as well accept it. Be grateful for it. What does it mean to pay a lot in income taxes? It means you have a lot of income. These are good problems to have. Seneca says we pay the taxes of life gladly. Painters like painting goes the expression, but writers like having written. I think this is actually true for a lot of difficult things. They're not fun while you're doing them, but it's how you feel after. Seneca said we treat the body rigorously so that it's not disobedient to the mind. There's a certain amount of abuse that we're putting ourselves through when we run or lift weights or push our limits on something, but it's how we feel after. It's another really important Stoic idea. Musonius Rufus says, when you do something hard out of discipline, the labor passes quickly, but the pride, the accomplishment remains. And so that's the idea as you're pushing yourself physically. Just finished a run. It wasn't so fun while I was doing it. It was tiring while I did it. But how I feel after, that's the reward. The thing you're worried about could happen. The flight could get delayed. You could miss the thing you were desperately trying to make. Package could get lost in the mail. You could get robbed. All these things could happen. Seneca says, my advice to you is do not be unhappy before it happens. He says, he who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. Our anxiety, our worry, our anticipation of the thing is torture before it happens. It's unnecessary. It's unfair. So just don't torture yourself before it's going to happen. Be present while you can. You don't need to borrow suffering. You don't need to make yourself more unhappy than you need to be. Of course, it's lovely to go on a trip. It's lovely to go cool places. But Seneca warns us to make sure that, to borrow Epictetus' phrase, that we're not fleeing ourselves. He likens the way that we travel from this destination to that destination, this vacation, this exotic locale, one to the other, trying to find happiness or peace or serenity, as if that's where we're going to find it, when in reality, all of that is going to be on the inside. He likens it to the person tossing and turning in bed, as if there's some magical, comfortable place that they'll finally fall asleep. You're never going to find it, he says, in the external things. You have to look inward. You have to look to philosophy. You find the peace by slowing down, by ceasing to move, by staying in one spot. Obviously, we all know we're going to die. We know we're going to die someday, right? Someday in the future. But this is wrong. Seneca says this is the wrong way to think about it. He says death isn't this thing that we're moving towards that looms off in the distance. He says death is happening right now. Not just in the sense that in the midst of life we are in death, but the time that passes belongs to death, Seneca says. We're dying every minute. We're dying every second. The time that passes is gone forever. As we kill time, it kills us. So how are you spending your time? How are you living accordingly, knowing the fact that you are dying this very minute, this very day? You can't learn that which you think you already know. That's Epictetus. He was sent the best and the brightest students from all over the Roman Empire. But he understood that conceit was the enemy. The problem with being a know-it-all is that it's true. It's impossible for you to know anything more. If you come to learning from a place of humility, if you come to it like Socrates did, the great hero of the Stoic, that you know what you don't know, or that you understand that you know very little, then it becomes possible for you to learn so much more. It's impossible to learn that which you think you already know. Focus on what you don't know. Focus on how much there is left to learn. Always stay a student. That's how you get better, smarter, and wiser. This is what you trained for. That's the whole point of philosophy, Epictetus says, to be able to say to whatever situation you find yourself in, whatever the moment is, big or small, positive or negative, you're supposed to be able to say, this is what I trained for. This is what it was all leading up to. This is the point of all of it. And now I'm going to apply all these things that I learned, that I've been reading about, that I've been talking about, that I've been experimenting with, all the experiences that I've gained up until this point. This is what it was all for. It's pretty simple, but it's worth remembering. There's some stuff that's in your control, and there's some stuff that's not in your control. And the time and the energy and the emotions that you spend, that you throw at the things you don't control, take away from the energy and time and opportunity and progress you can make on the things that you do control. So this basic exercise at the core of Stoic philosophy, the dichotomy of control, that there's some stuff that's up to us and there's some stuff that's not, is incredibly basic. But Epictetus says it's the first task of the philosopher to understand what's up to us and understand understand what isn't up to us. And basically, Stoicism says we don't control what happens, we don't control what other people do, we don't control what's happened before, we don't control what's going to happen in the future, we control how we respond to what happens. It may be reasonable that you're concerned about this thing. It would cause trouble if it happened. Again, so when the Stoics talk about how some things are in our control, some things are not in our control, what they're saying is, well, focus on what you control about this situation. Reminding yourself that, hey, just feeling anxiety, emoting about the problem, biting your nails about it, talking about it incessantly to people, it's not making it any more or less likely to happen. So try to put that energy to constructive use. Try to think about, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I can do. Here are ways that I can influence this situation, or at least prepare myself to be resilient or endure or bounce back from it if it does happen, right? Put yourself to constructive use. Put yourself working on something that makes a difference. Just make sure you're not confusing spending mental bandwidth and energy and torturing yourself emotionally. Don't confuse that with making a positive difference. Epictetus has an incredibly difficult life, born into slavery, walks with a limp because of it. And so you might think that there's some bitterness there, there's some frustration there. This would all be perfectly understandable. But that's not how Epictetus responds. When you experience difficulty, you have to say to yourself, life has spared me with a strong sparring partner. And this is how one becomes Olympic class material, by wrestling with, by fighting with something stronger, something better, something really difficult and challenging. And so you have to think of the adversity, the problems, the obstacles that life inevitably puts in your path, not as unfair, not as disadvantages, but in fact exactly the opposite. Advantages, as something good that's happened to you, something that's making you better than you would be had that never happened. You're an actor. We're all actors in a play. We don't control what's happening out here. We don't control who wrote it. We don't control the direction we're in. But like a good actor, you control how you play your role. You act the hell out of your role. You don't control what the director does. You don't control what the other actors do. You don't control how the play ends. And if it's a bad play, you want to be the best actor in that bad play. But if we all play our roles well, life can be amazing. I don't have goals. I have zero goals. I'm not trying to sell a certain number of copies. I'm not trying to write a certain number of books. I'm not trying to beat anyone. I'm not trying to be the best at anything. I don't really care about bestseller lists. I'm trying to do the thing. I like doing the thing. I wake up every day, I try my best, I put in my hours, I focus on what I control. I control what I put in, I control the effort that I put in, I control the energy that I direct at it, the brain power that I put in it. Everything else is not really up to me, so I leave that where it is. My goals are to be the best that I'm capable of being, to realize my potential. That's what I wake up and do. And to focus on specific metrics or specific goals or specific accomplishments, to me, is artificially delimiting. It's like putting a ceiling on it. My job is to do my best, to do the thing. That's what I want to keep doing. To do the thing, to do the writing, to do the work. Let the chips fall where they may. I don't need goals. I don't need that as my motivation, so that's not what I focus on. It's kind of a strange analogy, but Epictetus said that a philosopher is like a great ball player. And he said that Socrates actually is the greatest ball player there ever was. What he was saying is that a ball player doesn't label a throw good or bad. They just have to catch it. If it's a catchable ball, they have to catch it. And then they have to throw it back. He said that's what we have to do in life also. And he said Socrates was great because he dealt with a bad marriage, he dealt with war, he dealt with the fascism of his time, but his life would throw these things at him. He would catch them, right? And throw it back. That he gave as good as he got. And that's what we're trying to do as philosophers. That's what we're training for. That's how we're trying to live. Life throws balls at us and we have to catch them and then we have to throw them back. It doesn't matter if they're good throws or bad throws. That's what got thrown to us. We catch it and we throw it back. You don't get rich acquiring things, acquiring money. Epictetus says it's not about having many things. It's about having few wants. If you have everything you need, then you are very rich. Would it also be nice to pair that with having a lot of money? Sure. But you could also have very little and feel like enough, feel good. Get to a place where you feel like you have enough, then you are rich. When you pare your wants down, when you don't need anything from anyone or anything outside your control, that to the Stoics is true wealth. If you haven't read hundreds of books, you are functionally illiterate. That's the great line from General Mattis. He talks about this in his great book, Call Sign Chaos. But it calls to mind for me another famous line attributed in some cases to Mark Twain. It was this idea, he said, that there was no difference between a person who does not read and a person who cannot read. The wisest people who ever lived have written books. Some of the greatest people who have ever lived have books written about them. Some of the worst people who have ever lived have books written about them. Why would you not learn from this? Why would you not avail yourself of this knowledge? When Epictetus says you cannot learn that which you think you already know, it's talking about how conceit, how disinterest is the enemy of knowledge. You have this great brain. There is so much great knowledge out there. Why would you not avail yourself of it? Why would you not soak it in? Why would you not add, as Seneca said, all the wisdom and knowledge of the past into your own life? That's what we're trying to do here. That's what Stoicism is about. You're not being harmed. You're not being screwed over. You're not being challenged. You're being, Epictetus said, paired with a strong sparring partner. Life is helping you. Life is making you better. Life is teaching you. Life is making you stronger. You want to wrestle with this. You pick hard sparring partners. You pick people who you get better for wrestling with. When you're running, it happens all the time. Somebody passes you or you pass someone and then they start speeding up. One of the things you realize, or you have to realize, is that the race you're running is not against other people. The race you're running is against yourself. Epictetus said, enter races where winning is up to you. If you're racing against yourself, if you're racing against your own potential, if you're staying on the course that you are on, then you will always win. And it doesn't matter what other people are doing. You focus on what you are doing. It's not important that you read, Epictetus says. What matters is what you read, right? His point was that wasting time on bad books, reading the books that you think will impress other people, none of this matters. It matters what you're reading, right? Are you reading good books, books that push you, books that challenge you, books that make you think, books that make you better? I would add to this, it also matters how you read. Are you taking notes? Are you highlighting? Are you really thinking about it? Are you talking to other people about what you're finding in this book? Are you putting that stuff into use? So it's not that you read that counts, it's what you read. And it's not what you read, it's how you read. That's the secret to being a smart person. Get after it. It's not things that upset us, Epictetus reminds us. It's our opinion about things. The event is objective. It just is. The other person just is. What they're doing just is. The market doesn't care about you. The pandemic doesn't care about you. Traffic doesn't care about you. None of these things are trying to upset you. None of these things know you exist at all. It's not the thing that upsets us. It's not the thing that's the problem. It's our opinion about that thing. It's the telling ourselves that it's unfair, that it sucks, that it's somebody else's fault, that we'll never recover from it, that we've been injured by it, the Stoics would say. When we choose not to feel harmed by something, when we choose not to tell ourselves that something has ruined us, Marcus Aurelius says in Meditations, then we haven't been harmed. It's not the thing that upsets us, it's our opinion about that thing. It isn't just that ego is obnoxious. It isn't just that it's arrogant, that it's rude, that it's self-centered, that it's entitled, that it's all these unpleasant, ugly things. It's that ego makes you worse. Epictetus says, remember, it is impossible to learn that which you think you already know. That's the problem with ego. If you think you're perfect, if you think you know everything, in a sense, you're right, because you cannot be improved and you cannot learn anything else. So a humble person, Socrates, focuses on what he doesn't know. A person who focuses on where they can get better. A person who focuses on all the areas they have for improvement. That too becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And you do get better because there are opportunities, because you can take advantage of those opportunities. And then on top of that, you're much more pleasant to be around. Why do we do hard things? The Stoics would say we have to undergo a hard winter training. We have to push ourselves. We have to seek out places of resistance, of challenges, so that when life challenges us, when we find ourselves in difficult situations, as Epictetus said, we needed to be able to say, this is what I trained for. That's why we do the work. That's why we go to the gym. That's why we get up early. That's why we seek out difficult situations. We're training ourselves so that when that moment comes, we're ready. As Epictetus says, if you live with a lame man, you will start to limp. You become like the things that you put in your body. You become like the things that you consume, that you read about, that you watch, that you surround yourself with. You have to think about your information diet. You have to think about the proximity effect. What are you putting in? What are you surrounding yourself with? Because that will determine who you are. Epictetus is a slave in ancient Rome. And he realizes that slavery is the legal status, but it's also a state of mind. In The Girl Who Would Be Free, which is my sort of fictional kids book about Epictetus, I actually render her as a girl for a bunch of whatever reasons, I have Epictetus's father say, that we have to worry about controlling the empire between our ears. There's all this stuff that Epictetus doesn't control. What other people do, what other people say, what he's allowed to do and say, but no one can control his thoughts. So the girl who would be free is really about that, finding freedom within captivity, finding freedom inside constraint. Usually when I sign this one, I'll write amor fati, because it's sort of a theme in the book. It's about finding what you love about your situation, what you can do inside your situation, who you can be inside your situation. And I think ultimately that's what Stoicism itself is about. And I wanted to write a kid's book to help kids with that very idea, like I also did in The Boy Who Would Be King.
What I love about what you do, the Daily Stoic, Stoicism in general, is how it applies to so many different aspects of life. I was listening to your conversation with Gary Vaynerchuk and also your conversation with Matt Joy.
Yeah.
And how it applies to your ability to be the fact that you're complicit when somebody else says something and you're like,
Sure.
I take offense to that, or like, I'm so annoyed right now. If you were able to actually accept that that is true, that you are complicit in those situations, do you know how much stress you would relieve from yourself in corporate America on a day in and day out basis?
Crazy.
It's nuts. That's like a 90% lift of weight off of your shoulders. And that's just one example of all of these things that seem to span corporate America, running, entrepreneurship, writing a book, being a parent. Like, that's what I've loved. And like, as I was connecting the dots for this conversation, I was like, man, there's so much that applies here, both in the nitty gritty of like hardcore corporate America, but then also, why do you run every day, incessantly, and, feel like you can't get away from it almost?
The corporate example, I think, of being offended, where we're complicit in it, what the Stoics would talk about is, to me, the quintessential example is like, you get an email and then you're offended by the tone.
Yep.
But the tone doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You decided that 3 periods meant something.
Yep.
Or you decided that K meant something versus okay
Yep.
or yes, right? Look, obviously, as human beings, one of our skills is we're good at noticing little things. We're incredibly perceptive animals, but we're so perceptive that we can often perceive things where it doesn't exist. And I think that's one of the things you learn when you get in a position of leadership or you become a boss, is now suddenly you're hearing from people how they interpreted things that you did. And you're like, I was busy.
Yeah.
I said K because it was the fastest response that I had.
Yeah.
And I was running between 2 meetings. I meant literally nothing by it. And I've had employees where it almost just ultimately came to a place where it didn't work because of what they brought to the table. They were so sensitive. And I don't mean in a snowflake way, but they were just often intuiting or interpreting things as being negative about them. And it's like, I'm literally not thinking about you at all.
Yeah.
I was busy, and that's why I didn't notice you in the hall or whatever, right? So like our ability to take an objective thing or a thing that's not about us and make it about us, or make it hurtful or rude, or, do they not think I'm a valuable member of the team anymore? Are they getting ready to move on from me? You get in this whole thing and you realize you've had a whole conversation with yourself about someone who has 50 of you that they're working with. And you're just not as significant as your ego is making you out to be, and thus torturing yourself.
Yeah. There's such a small percentage that I've seen, percentage of people that have that awareness, that I found the team operated best when I understood that that was something that I had to carry for them.
Yes.
That especially in the difference between a place where khakis may not be, that's like the only thing you could wear when you show up on campus.
Yeah.
And 100,000 person company, lots of rules and regulations, not a lot of personality. I've had to be fully okay with the fact that how I said good morning, the tone in which I would say good morning, could have an impact on someone's entire day.
Yes.
And especially getting into a larger role at 35, like that kind of fucked me up in the head, but I would say in a good way, where I would start to carry that. I need to be super cognizant of the fact that my number one responsibility is for people to go home at the end of the day and say, today was a good day.
Yeah.
Because if they can do that on a consistent basis, all the complicated bullshit that goes along with corporate America and all the other policy and the other stuff will start to sort itself out. And like our KPIs and like our goals will be easier to hit if they're okay with that. And it did mean probably an unbalanced burden of that understanding that as much as I want to be like, okay, fine, in this moment, that person is going to potentially read it 8 different ways. And then I might have to deal with whatever those ramifications are because they're going to spiral and this is going to be their next decision. And then they're going to go to somebody else and waste 10 minutes being like, hey, is Tim mad at me about this? And I do think that there's in corporate, because of how much impact our jobs, corporate America has on mental health.
Yeah.
I do think bosses, especially when it comes to like higher level and the CEOs in the space, need to be cognizant of the fact that what we're discussing now is not a strong skill set across the board to be able to understand that, like, I don't need to overanalyze everything.
Yeah. Well, no, that's the tension, right? So you as the individual, following the advice from the Stoics, have to go, look, if somebody says something, I'm choosing to be offended.
Yep.
I control my emotions. I'm responsible for my feelings. And then you have to flip it when you're in the position of leadership or responsibility. Even though you don't actually control how other people interpret what you say, and it's their fault if they, take it this way versus that way, you still have to expend an immense amount of effort anticipating how things are going to be interpreted. So it's like I go through the world trying not to be offended.
Yeah.
And I also go through the world knowing that, like, look, I'm not going to please everyone and some people are going to be offended by what I say, but it's still my obligation as both a boss who's trying to just get things done and then a human being who's trying to be decent to think about the weight of the words that I'm choosing and make sure that I'm not unnecessarily offending someone. And if, hey, knowing this person can handle, no bullshit, straight talk, and this person, you got to sandwich it with a bunch of compliments. And this person, like, if it's not in writing, they're not going to be able to handle it. Understanding that you have a lot of not control, but you have to dial it just right, or you're going to needlessly hurt people, or just not be effective if you're not thinking about the consequences of your words and actions on other people. Again, even though at the end of the day, it's their responsibility and they don't control, and you don't control it.
Yeah. Sounds a lot like parenting as well.
Totally. Yes. Yeah. It's just thinking about, like, how you deliver the message. What is the message? What's the vibe of the message? It's much more complicated than, I think sometimes you can read the Stoics and it seems very straightforward, like, say what's true. And it's like, okay, but sometimes that's going to blow up in your face. That's not to say you lie, but you have to figure out how the best way to deliver that truth so it's actually heard by the flawed person you're delivering it to.
And that you're outcome oriented as well, right? Like, if my objective here is to simply get the broccoli to get eaten and to have there not be a lot of drama around that, what is the best way to make that happen?
Yes.
And then, and whether that's, hey, we need a revision to this PowerPoint deck, and the person's going to freak out because it's 4:45 on whatever day, but, like, here are the things that are happening that make that a need right now.
Sure.
And then thinking about, okay, if I want the person to not freak out, I still need the thing to get done. Then I think that kind of starts to encompass, plus the understanding that they may interpret this in a certain way and be like, oh, you're just doing this to be mean because you don't like whatever about me, and that's why I have to eat the broccoli, or I'm in trouble because I messed up this PowerPoint deck. Those are the variables that, sometimes we got to bring into our head. And then,
well, every person needs a different message. Like, one of my sons is like, to get something through to him, I'm not saying you yell, because he doesn't respond to yelling, but it's like, you really have to over deliver this message, and you have to deliver it multiple times for it to pierce whatever the sort of defensive bubble / not paying attention / just like determination of him. And then it wasn't until my youngest started to get to the age where he was doing some of the things that we have struggled with my oldest with a bunch. And then you're like, you can't do that. Like, you cannot bite people. I don't know how to communicate this to you. You can't bite people. And then watching that just, like, crush my youngest. And you realize, oh, you're much more sensitive than your brother. So I have, for the first 8 years of this person's life, been calibrating a severity and an intensity of message so it can be received by this one person who wants to hear it. And then this one over here is on a totally different frequency. And so if I only have one way of delivering messages, it's still not going to get through over here, and it's going to crush this one over here. And so, with kids, you sort of learn how to dial in the message just right. There's some line, I think, from Confucius, the student comes to him and he's like, you should do this. And then another student comes to him and he's like, you should do this. And then this other student says, but you just gave them very different messages. One, he told it to like zoom in, and the other, he told them to zoom out. And the third student is sort of perplexed by this. But that's life, right? That's what the Confucius says, is like some students need to hear this and some students need to hear that. And I think that's how it goes for people. Like the message can be the same, but the angle at which it's delivered or how it's explained can have an enormous impact as far as how it's received. If you don't get the Daily Stoic email, you should. It's one piece of Stoic-inspired wisdom. It takes just a couple minutes to read every single morning. It goes out. It's totally free. You can unsubscribe at any time, and you can grab it at dailystoic.com/email. Or just click the link below.